Is there solid evidence for the historicity of the Bible? This is just an introductory lecture for those who seek answer to this question. Let us begin by dividing the question in two sub-questions. First, can we find in history, as far as we know it, the names, events, places, and times indicated in the Bible? And second, when we read the Bible, what span of history does it cover? Let's start with the first part. There are some anchor points in time that allow us to tell quite exactly when a certain event took place. One such case is the Assyrian eclipse in 763 BC. Of course, this date is not to be found as such, but we know that the eclipse in Nineveh that is mentioned on a tablet from a large library from that specific period of time took place indeed in 763 BC, if we count time in the way we do today. The interesting thing is that the tablets, those tablets, give us a long list of kings and events every year, both before and after the eclipse. Now, this is exactly how we know that the invasion of Judah by Sennacherib took place in 701 BC, that is, the 4th year of King Sennacherib. And this, according to 2 Kings 18:13, is the 14th year of Hezekiah, king of Judah. Now, we will try to travel back and forth and to see whether the events in the Bible and the events described in history match or not. If we go back, we find another match between the Assyrian inscriptions and the Bible. The names and depictions on the stele and obelisk of Shalmaneser III, king of Assyria. Names like Ahab, Ben-Hadad, just like in the Bible, at the exact time as the Bible mentions those names, plus, right image, Jehu, king of Israel, believed to be from the house of Omri, the father of Ahab. Those who know the Bible will probably smile. But you see, Shalmaneser did not really care whose descendant is the vassal paying him tribute. So, say hello to Jehu. Now, further back, King Mesha of Moab, mentioned in 2 Kings 3, tells the same story as in the Bible, in the same period as described in the Bible. Just that he mentions it in his own way, saying that his idol helped him and caused the Israelites to leave him alone because he sacrificed his son to the idol. Same story as in the Bible, in the exact period of time. Only there in the Bible it says that the kings of Israel and Judah were so disgusted at the scene that they decided to leave the siege and go home. Now, in 930 BC, Shishak or Shoshank, the pharaoh, is mentioned both in the Bible and on an inscription in Karnak in Egypt. And this is a piece of pottery with the inscription Yerubal. That's Gideon, isn't he? And further back in time, we find Pharaoh Merneptah describing Canaan. Now this is very interesting because it fits the period described in the book of Judges, when the Israelites have not yet conquered the whole land. Moreover, for long periods of time, they were dominated by other nations in and around Canaan. This is the part of the inscription that is interesting for us. And we see Israel described as a group of people, not yet a country as such, while Ashkelon and Gezer are clearly described as fortified cities. Further back, this is one of the Amarna letters sent from Canaan to Egypt, in which the kings of Canaan ask for help. But Egypt is too weak to be able to do something. And we don't speak about just one letter. For those who want to dive into the topic, I leave links at the end of this video. The match with the book of Joshua is stunning. Now, let's change the direction of our history travel and jump back to Joseph, and then try to slowly come to the Exodus and to the book of Joshua, where we left. The date of the Exodus is 440 years in Septuagint, that is the Greek version of the Old Testament, or 480 years in the Hebrew manuscripts of the Old Testament, reconstituted around 1000 AD. So this brings us around 1400 BC, that is 440 or 480 years back from the date of the construction of the Temple of Solomon, which is probably 966 BC. This being said, let's read carefully in Exodus the succession of events after Joseph and watch how it corresponds to the names and events known in history. So, in verse 7 of chapter 1, we read of a lapse of time in which the Israelites were just fine, prospering. History calls this intermediate period, when Egypt was under the rule of the Hyksos, a group of Asiatics, that is, Canaanites. Not the Jews, but other Canaanites, like, for instance, the Amorites. But then, Ahmoses I came to power. Yeah, this man. He drove the Hyksos away and enslaved the Israelites. This is Exodus 1 verse 8. Another lapse of time followed, when, though afflicted, the people multiplied. This was under the rule of Amenhotep I, this man. And after him comes one who wants to get rid of the boys that were born to the Israelites. Yep, that's him, Tutmosis I. Strange name, isn't it? Tutmosis. He could not have a son from his wife, the royal queen. She only gave him a daughter, Hatshepsut. She fits so well the description of the lady who took Moses out of the Nile. She was really called daughter of Pharaoh, just like in Hebrews 11. We have it on the inscriptions. And, she is also remembered in the history of Egypt as the one who loves strangers, foreigners. She takes Moses. Smart lady, wasn't she? And from now on we know the story very well. 40 years Moses grows up. He then flees to Midian for 40 years. And guess who was ruling Egypt during that period? It was Hatshepsut's nephew, Tutmosis III, born to the stepbrother of Hatshepsut, which was Tutmosis II. Don't worry, the list will be shown shortly. Now, you see, this Tutmosis III was one of the very few who ruled more than 40 years, the time spent by Moses in Midian. His son, most likely the very Pharaoh of the Exodus, the one with the plagues and the sorcerers. You know the story in Exodus till chapter 14. Yeah, this man, Amenhotep II, was not his father's firstborn, or else he had to die at the last plague. How's that for a coincidence? Now, his firstborn isn't ruling either. After him. Yeah, the death of the firstborn. And the heir to the throne, the new heir to the throne, needs to tell the people he is the new ruler. Now, how could he do that? He had an awkward idea. See the black stone, obviously not belonging there? It says, "Have dreamed here, right in the spot, that the gods appointed me as Pharaoh." So he was like, see this big guy behind? It was his will. You guessed why he had to justify his accession to the throne. Because he was not the firstborn. Now, after that, we know that 40 more years pass in which the Israelites wander in the wilderness. Egypt is under the rule of Amenhotep III. Guess what he inscribes on a pillar in the temple of Soleb? The nomads of Yahweh are no more. Remember Numbers 14? When Moses says to God that he must bring the people into the promised land, otherwise the Egyptians will mock God. Moses knew what he was talking about, although he did not have the occasion to read that specific inscription, but he knew the Egyptians. And then God brings the Israelites into the land, and Joshua starts the conquest. A long time, about 20 years. And this period of conquest continues on in the time of Judges, as we read in the Bible. Now, during the time of Joshua, you see, we're close to where we left. In Egypt ruled this couple, Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti. He is the one who received the Amarna letters that we mentioned before. And this is around 1350 BC. And now, look at the list. Details in the Bible confirmed by history. Now, next question. What if we go further back? This brother is Joel Kramer. YouTube channel Expedition Bible. He has a very interesting video about the cities of the plains. That is Sodom, Gomorrah, Zoar, Admah, and Zeboim. All burned, just as the Bible tells. Only one, right in the middle, that is Zoar, didn't burn. The sulfur balls for burning and what not burning is to tell this ancient story in a symbolistic way. And you know, this is sulfur, just like the Bible says. It couldn't have been written by one who was not well acquainted with the details. And if you wonder how those sulfur balls did not burn completely at the time they fell from the sky, well, the answer is simple. They fell in the Dead Sea. And when the sea retreated, millennia later, they are still to be found in the soil. And this is where Brother Kramer found them. Now, you may wonder about the date. There it is, roughly 400 years before Joseph. And now comes a big surprise. China. A time capsule. They're writing a system of elaborated pictograms telling stories is a proof that back in time, Noah instructed his grandchildren in the truth. The same truth contained in the Bible and the Chinese writing. Take the pictogram for West. It tells about one son, Adam, the son of God as it were, in an enclosed garden. And yes, it was west of China. Coincidence? Imaginative interpretation? What about the next one? Something revealed about two trees. That is, forbidden. To covet, two trees and a woman. Next one. Just read it as a phrase. Me, I, am the hand that holds the dagger, and the lamb is the sacrifice I bring, so God declares me righteous. You see, those were informations that we had all throughout history. It's there. It's written. And then the story of Cain and Abel. The brother was the murderer. Now look at this one. See the boat? Water level, oars, rudder, bimini top. Wow. And 8. This is what the first boat was carrying. 8 people, Noah, his wife, and his 3 sons with their wives, 8 in total. I once asked a Chinese friend why, when he writes tower, he adds that all men had one mouth or language. He was surprised, because they simply write it like that without asking questions. They write and that's it. But you see, one day you start asking questions. You start asking yourself why. And then you start seeing. This being said, we arrive at the second question that we asked in the beginning. That is the second part of our video. What period of time of our history is the Bible covering? Oversimplified view. The verses on the left divide the time in three: before the flood, the present age, and the age to come. On the right, the dates as given in the Bible. Now please remember, we went as far back as Abraham. And the biblical dates matched the archaeological findings. As I said, before this, evidence is slowly fading. But one thing is clear: there was something that seems lost forever. Enough to say that 3000 BC is the time of the first documented pharaoh, Narmer. The time when the Bible places Noah, and the time when the Assyrians place Utanapishtim, the legendary man who passed the Great Flood. Is it coincidence again? Now we need to add another detail, that when the Bible dates the Tower of Babel and somewhat later the dispersion of the nations over the whole earth, it is then that the Chinese placed their first emperor. Now, another surprising thing is that in the Bible, the story goes on in a way that we don't find in any other book, in any other ancient writing. And then it continues through the millennia. And it goes on till the age to come, the history of the future. And then we have the few but powerful verses describing the eternal state. The Bible speaks as if its author has been here every single day, not only telling us about the past, but doing so while coming from the future. Yeah, this is what I want to say. The Bible goes from eternity to eternity. Now, two more things before closing. In this tablet, Nabonidus, the last king of Babylon, is asking a goddess to take care for his son, Belshazzar, whom he, while on military campaign, left as co-regent in Babylon. Those who know the biblical text will understand why Belshazzar gives Daniel, that's Daniel chapter 5, the third and not the second place in the kingdom. Now, the weird thing is that history seems to have no idea about the men mentioned in the Bible, while the Bible gives the most accurate and complete description of that fateful night. Had not been for the discovery of the tablet some 200 years ago, the skeptics would have kept saying that the Bible is inventing kings that never existed. But now we know who was right. And now the other thing. This is in Iran, where the story of Esther takes place. The Persian name of the king is Hashayor, much closer to Ahasuerus, as the Bible mentions him. This is actually Xerxes, as the Greeks called him. Well, it doesn't sound like that in Greek anyhow. But what I wanted to point out is that the description in the Bible is so accurate. One can tell exactly where Esther was standing, waiting for the king to invite her in. You see, that book of Esther in the Bible was written by someone who was well acquainted with the palace, even in the most private parts, where only the king and highest-ranking officials would go. What this means is that the book of Esther was not invented later. I think I'll leave you here for now. This is Joel Kramer presenting his book, Where God Came Down, a bestseller in archaeology. And here are some of the sources where I found all of the above. See, the Bible is not a history book, but its historicity is beyond doubt. It comes from the future and knows everything about past, present, and future. But the fact is that the more I read it, I find out how much it knows about me. Indeed, much more than I do myself. But above all this, it tells us something about its author. Something that can be said in few words, but meaning so much. It tells us that nothing counts but Christ. All things are from Him, through Him, and for Him. And you have the answer to the old question, why? Why everything? It's for the glory of Christ and for the happiness of all those who put their trust in Him. And if you say, oh yeah, but there's so much misery now in the world and pain and suffering, the answer is the same. It's because Jesus Christ has been rejected.